press this button. Broadcasting from the beautiful Hill Country in Texas, this is OneRadioNetwork.com. Well, a very pleasant good morning to you. Hi there, this is Patrick Timpone, and we are broadcasting live from the Texas Hill Country in the great state of Texas, where we are talking about seceding from the Union. So if you want to join the crowd, just come on down and we'll have a party. Florida's coming in, Oklahoma and Tennessee. It'll be great. If you'd like to be on the show, call and talk to Dr. Bear Lando, our special guest this morning. They're all special, but he's really a cool guy. And we have no idea what we're going to talk about, but I know you'll have fun. So stick around. Call if you'd like. 888-663-6386. Email Patrick, OneRadioNetwork.com. We're live here. It is the 26th of July in the year of 2022. Tomorrow, legendary investor Jim Rogers. I don't know if you've heard of Jim Rogers, but he's been around forever. He does very well at investing and has a whole long history of just doing the right thing, kind of a Jimmy Buffett type. Big guy, money guy. I mean, he's made a lot of bucks over the years, and he lives in Singapore, and maybe he knows something, but his children all know Mandarin. We'll ask him why that is, and to talk to him about gold, silver, oil, China, Russia, reserve currency with Russia and China that they're talking about, and stock market and good stuff. That'll be tomorrow. We're going to start an hour early because Mr. Rogers, Jim Rogers, is in Singapore, so it's a 13-hour difference. So it'll start at 10 o'clock his time. So we'll be on at 9 in the morning. Then Matthew Ehret, who's one of the all-time great researchers in the world of geopolitics. He's a good guy. He's on probably once every 6 weeks, and he is also going to be talking about China and Russia getting together and going to party down and seeing what they can do to, whatever. In his beautiful setting up in the northwest of the world is Bear Paul Lando. Mr. Bear, do people call you Bear or Paul or Lando?
Bear, but you can call me whatever you want.
Call me what you want. Good morning, Bear. How you doing?
Good morning. Always good to see you, Patrick.
Nice to see you. Boy, I don't know what you're doing, but boy, your little face looks good, man. What do you put baby oil on there? What do you do? I mean, you I don't see a crinkle anywhere, dude.
I spent a long time in makeup this morning.
Is that right? Yeah, me too. Yeah, I do makeup too. Yeah. Do you do anything special you do so many good things for your body, which I guess it comes out in the skin, right? It just does. Yeah.
Yeah, I spend most of my time outside, which is why I'm a little tan this time of year.
Yeah.
My day starts, it started about 5 o'clock this morning. Actually, 4:30, we had a bear dogging our chickens, so I had to go yell at him. And but I start irrigation lines, about 5:30 in the morning because it gets pretty warm. We're in the Pacific Northwest, but it gets pretty hot. We're in a remote river canyon.
Yeah.
So I start early and then work outside, come in usually about this time for a little morning break. So it works perfect for our talk.
Yeah. So
and
when
then
I invite
go
you
back outside and work.
Yeah. When I invite you on,
afternoon we jump in the river because we're usually pretty hot by then.
Wow. So when you come on 8 o'clock your time, it kind of works for you because it's 10 o'clock our time. And your river is stunning. You wouldn't by any chance, maybe during a break, you could send us a little pic of some of your river, your land up there that we could show everybody? Do you have something on your computer? Yeah. You're a geek.
Oh,
you got something?
If we have a little break, I can scrape something together.
Yeah, and shoot it off to us. Yeah. So, wow. You and your wife, right? So, what do you do with all that food you grow? What do you do with it?
Well, we have a one individual who lives here and helps full time.
Mm-hmm.
We have help that comes in a couple times a week, other than her. And we have, you can't see your neighbors. We're in an off-grid community. We're about 30 miles maybe away from the nearest power line.
Wow.
No cell service. I'm on a satellite now. And in this area, we have about 12 homesteads, and it's a really nice area. It's everybody maintains their property, and so we all know each other, but we're all dispersed pretty far away from each other.
Yeah.
So to make a long story short, we share all our stuff with
everybody. Yeah, your internet thing is stopped up a little bit. I think his little satellite just crossed over the sun. Let me make sure it's not me. You froze up there for a second.
Yeah, I saw that on my end.
Was it your end?
We're okay now.
Was it your end?
I have no idea.
I'm going to check mine just to make sure. Yeah, let me just check mine to make sure. Oh, you're on satellite. Have you looked into Elon Musk, the Earthlink thing?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I'm testing it out right now. And so far, the speed and everything is off the charts better than the old company that I dealt with. I'm keeping the old company just to make sure the Starlink works and make sure I don't wake up in the middle of the night with Elon beaming things straight into my brain, right?
he may do that to give you investment advice, to buy a car or something like that. So you're on it now, but my geek said it works pretty good, and I was going to get it, but then mine's been going so good that I didn't want to, push my luck here. So I just said, okay, I passed on it. But my geek said it's pretty good stuff. So far so good. So far so good.
The problem we have too is we're surrounded, by forest, and we're in a little bowl where our farm is, but there's huge old growth, fir and redwood and everything. So you got to get over the tips of those. So I guess it's determined your reception by wherever the helium balloons are.
That's right.
Some people call them satellites.
Yeah, well, we know better than that. Tell folks what you're talking about, because this is really interesting. I talk about this quite a bit because I'm a flat earther. So Elon Musk, well, you tell him, what do you think's going on with these satellites?
Well, I don't believe they're circling the planet, the globe, as we have been told. I am not bashful about telling people that I am a globe, as we're told, skeptic. I don't think we're a flat plane floating in space somehow either. That's how they disparage the flat earthers, just to make it look stupid.
But, you mean so they put up a flat earth thing saying you're going around this thing?
Exactly. But I believe that we are in a technological realm of intelligent design. And a lot of my work that goes back to ancient alchemy, but is now updated through waveform physics, really reveals that it is a technological realm, and there indeed is a higher intelligence behind it. And we all have quite a say as far as what goes on in this realm.
A technological realm. Could that then incorporate you and I as spiritual beings creating this realm? It's coming through us, and we create it by what we believe?
Absolutely. We're not only the capacitors on the ground that receive the resonance from the higher realms, but also we are capable of thought. And as a lot of people are starting to understand, we live in a thought-based universe, because thought is the only progenitor in existence that creates electrical vectors. So every thought creates a polarization, which means it creates a resonance. Just like when you pluck on a guitar string, it starts, vibrating. That creates a resonance between the two polarities. And then with our thought given velocity by our emotional content at the astral plane, then that gives it all the characteristics along 18 dimensions of all waveforms, every single thought, to make it appear in the function and form that it does within the realm that we experience with our senses. And our senses, we have to remember, are also a fabrication of that same system. So the senses are not as real as we think of them either. But they're, of course, deeper senses that we can tap into that supersede the five senses. And that's another story.
Wow. What a geek you are, man. I love this stuff. Per Paul Londo is with us. If you'd like to join and you say, what did he just say? Well, email or call and we'll talk about it. So, this idea of back to the, what'd you call it? A technological, what'd you call it?
A technological realm.
So it would be similar then to the astral or the causal plane. This is just the same thing, but on a physical plane. Are those things also created by you and I as souls with spirit running through us?
Well, we're, if you understand old Hermetic principles, the same design fractally descends down the ladder and creates every level of life. But we're talking about is different levels of ether. And of course, ether was conveniently taken out of our scientism that I had to learn in medical school because it would actually teach you how things work. And of course, we need to be dumb in order to be controlled. So if you look at, go back to the electrical vectors that we're talking about emanating from thought, if you can appreciate there is, the creator, whatever you want to call that, that universal intelligence, the same forces are at work on a larger scale to create all the patterns in, nature as we know it. And also, if you understand waveform mechanics, then those electrical vectors go in two directions simultaneously. In one direction, they take data, information, no different than a computer, and they compact it, they compress it into, a stratified, descending matter so that that's what we experience here on the ground. But then simultaneously, that information disperses and radiates back up, and that creates what we call these days a toroidal field. So that toroidal field is exactly what our realm is on a larger scale with all the universal patterns that then we get to use on an individual and collective basis to create our own toroidal fields, which create our body, create our experience, create all of our, institutions and everything about us that we experience.
Wow. Yeah, I've been contemplating. Oh, Doodle! My goodness, that's my golden doodle. She just, hey, sweetie, why don't you lay down? You want to come over here and say hi? I've been contemplating this a lot lately, where I'm even kind of tightening the image of mind, body, soul, mind, body, where it's like. In the final analysis, obviously, you and I are not the body, right? We leave this earthly realm, and the body stays. And God knows, sometimes I guess you take the mind for a while. It depends on where you go, I guess. But I've been thinking quite a bit the last few weeks. It's interesting we're having this conversation that I am the body, right? As I sit here, and every thought, and every image, and every feeling that I experience, and especially those that I accept as real, right? You can jump in to a state of consciousness and say, no, it's over, right? It's just gone because it's only now. But that's in the body, isn't it? Because the body is a thought. The body is a creation of thought, right?
It's a moment-by-moment projection.
Projection, right? So in the eternal now, it is just a projection of what you and I are thinking and believing and feeling now.
And we've reversed the access of our being by thinking that we are the projection rather than the I am, which is the electronic body, the individualization of the creator that is pure electronic intelligence, the sacred fire, as they call it, which then is the go-between, the mediator between universal intelligence and the projection on the ground we call the body. So the more we wrap our minds around this, not just intellectually, but with certain practices, start to experience that more firsthand, then that access starts to teeter and shift back again, where we start to appreciate that we are the projector, not the projection.
We are the cause.
Yes.
And there's only one original cause, and that's us.
Yes.
Even though I know it gets a little geeky when you think about it like that. And I don't mean that from a, hubris saying, "Oh, I'm the cause." Not like that. But maybe you can explain how we are the cause without being crazy. You know what I mean?
Well, and a lot of people say, "Oh, come on, how do you know?" Well, you can't know with your senses. However, there is a wealth of information from scripture, from old texts, centuries old, the real science that has survived over the eons, what we call alchemy, through theosophy, anthroposophy, all the original schools of sacred knowledge. They all say the same thing. But some of them even give us practices that we can apply in medicine, agriculture, laboratory science, and also inner experience that we're able to produce with certain practices that actually proves these things out. So if anybody like ourselves comes out and starts saying, well, this is kind of how it works, of course we can't see everything. On the other hand, we can validate, and anybody can validate a lot of this in their own experience if they want to put out the effort.
Yeah. And I think what you said is key in my experience, for what it's worth, is that the idea, the old saying, what is it, that spirituality must be caught and not taught. You can talk about this stuff, and it's great. And, like you go to a webinar or a seminar, and you go home, and then you forget about it. But my experience there is that I have to think about it a lot, contemplate it, understand it, and believe it. And, you kind of fake it till I make it kind of idea. You just keep... Does that make sense?
That's all we can do, and that's all we are doing. And, of course, it's an adventure, and, that's the fun of it. And, you talk about cause. The opposite of cause is victim. And
victim.
Isn't it interesting that the controllers, the would-be controllers, have us, really into victim consciousness wherever we go. And in fact, the most esteemed class of people are victims. So, in our new cosmogony, that you're trying to create here. So it's not arrogant.
It's not arrogant. That was the word I was looking for. Yeah, that was the word I'm looking for. We're surviving, and we're thriving because we've been blessed enough to get a little insight that we're not victims, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's pretty arrogant to suggest that, our job here is to screw up the creator's design. If we're...
That's what I'm going to do my way. That's right.
If we're instead, and following universal design, that's the most humble endeavor possible. And it's also the most empowering at the same time.
Yeah. I can recall it was in the early 80s, I was in San Francisco on some adventure, and I was leaning against a fence outside of some Buddhist temple thing that I went in there to talk to some guy about God. I don't know what I was doing, one of those things, knock on the door, and, and I was sitting there on this fence, kind of closing my eyes, just meditating, looking at thoughts and trying to figure out who I was. And I kept saying to myself, how is it? I kept saying, how is it? So what I wanted to know is, how is it? What's the truth? I mean, I want to see what it is, how is it? And this was I asked myself that question. And I've got to the point now, how would you, it's not too arrogant to say how is it is how we think it is what our state of consciousness is how it is. Is that fair?
Well, that old saying, I think, therefore I am, who was that, Goethe? Oh, no, Descartes. Yeah, there's some truth to that. It can be qualified a little bit also, but...
how would you qualify it?
Well, if we are individuals capable of thought, therefore, we are co-creators,
Yes.
but there are other kingdoms within nature that do not cognate the way we do, and they are still, in existence. But I am, of course, suggests that we're self-conscious about our presence, in a particular coordinate of consciousness.
Right, but how is it for Bear and how is it for Patrick is totally unique, and how it is for both of us and all of our listeners, right? But somehow we're existing in the different realities at the same time, and sometimes we choose to hang out together and interact, and that's fun. That's what it's all about. But we're still, our reality is still unique, and it will always be unique, right?
Well, if go back to the idea of the waveform and different dimensions on the waveform.
I don't quite get the waveform thing. That's a little geeky for me. Maybe you can talk to us like we're a young child or a golden retriever and talk to us about waveforms. Okay.
That's funny. I was just contemplating getting a golden retriever the other day.
See, there you go. That's a
wonderful dogs.
Yeah.
So the mechanics, if you understand, again, we're talking about an electrical vector. All we're talking about is the same thing that happens when you plug your toaster oven in. Mm-hmm. It's just a step down, crude, dirty version of, that more refined electricity that we produce with our thought. Okay. But if you look at a waveform, we think, again, go back to the guitar string, you pluck it and it vibrates. In reality, it's creating a waveform. In textbooks, we always see waveforms that, just look like an up and down kind of wave. Mm-hmm. In reality, it's a three-dimensional spiral.
Ooh.
And along that spiral, imagine again a musical note with an instrument, depending what note you're plucking, depending what chord, which might have different harmonics between the keynotes, it's going to give different sound characteristics. We experience these things all the time. So when we produce thought, and that thought is qualified by an idea, something that we want to create, even if it's just to get up out of the chair to go to the refrigerator, that's creating an event. Every thought has a consequence. Mm-hmm. Some thoughts, will maybe be put on a architectural, piece of paper and then eventually produce a building. But every thought, along all these dimensions, there's actually 18 of them, will give it the characteristics based on the original idea and then based on the emotional content that is fueling the intention to bring that idea into manifestation. And, we're really feeling creatures. We're really not thinking creatures, even though thinking initiates the whole.
He froze up again a little bit.
And everything, and nothing's going to. Yeah, I really develop a lot of passion behind it and, put some elbow grease behind it on the ground, then we're in business. I just froze up again. Are you hearing me?
You froze up a little bit. So it's the idea, I think you were going where when we put feeling and belief and just an expectation that this thought is going to manifest, that strengthens the waveforms or the vibrations.
Properly understood, it would give it the velocity.
The velocity.
To pick up steam as it goes through the ether levels. Now, the ether levels, if you want to think of thought, you would think more about the fire, the first element. That's the volatile element that we can equate to the sacred fire that, puts those forces in motion in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to have a medium in order to carry that energy from the fire. That's the second volatile level of what we call the ether in traditional alchemy. And by the way, the fire element, if we want to relate it to chemistry, that would be hydrogen. Hydrogen. Because, there's different levels of all these things. So you can be a contemporary scientist and actually start making sense out of this. And the second level, which is the air, is going to be nitrogen. Nitrogen is the purest form of substance that picks up all the information. And then there's a fermentation that is created in the ethers when it hits the next level, which is the oxygen level and what we call the water element. That's why water is such a magical substance. It's the transmitting utility that brings all of those forces down through the ethers into its final level of fixed elements on the ground, which is the carbon strata, the earth element, and then what we experience or what we think we experience in this realm. So you take those thought forms, you can relate them to traditional alchemy going through the ethers, because ether is nothing more than, say water in the ocean that transmits a wave. If you're out surfing, you can't, a wave can't go from point A to point B unless it has something to travel through. Ether is the substance that carries the thought forms all the way through and creates, its final fixed properties that we experience on the ground in all the three kingdoms. And then if you combine those elements from the ether, we're looking at fire, air, water, earth. Those are combined in ways to create three attributes, which in alchemy is our body, and all the corporeal things we experience on the ground, and we call that the salt in alchemy. The individualized soul, which is more from the volatile elements, the first two layers, that's called the sulfur in alchemy. We do this with plant medicine and mineral medicine in the lab. And then you have the mercury, which is the mediator between heaven and earth, we could say, which is a combination of the fixed levels below of the ether and the volatile elements above. But that creates the three attributes that you and I are made up of, and that every kingdom, plant, mineral, and animal kingdoms are made up of, within our realm.
Whoa. Okay, so its spirit manifests in itself in different, we call them hydrogen, oxygen, and all that, but it's still God particles that are just the word made man, or the word, what's that term in the Bible? The word made flesh, I guess, is what it is.
Yeah. And then, of course, a famous gentleman one time said, "See no man after the flesh." And of course, what he was trying to teach us is that, the flesh is not who we are. We're the spirit behind the flesh. And I know a lot of this sounds geeky to people that are hearing it for the first time, but it's really an easy to comprehend system that explains everything. And it's way easier to comprehend once you understand the terminology and hear it a few times than all the garbage I had to learn in school, in order to become a physician. All of that is just discombobulated factoids that don't add up, but, you're told it's the truth and shut up and just learn it.
Yeah.
And, that's why you have to go through years of, mind control education, in order to memorize all that garbage. And then by the time you get out, nothing works anyway, and everybody keeps getting sicker.
Yeah. You mentioned what the fire, earth, water are. They have 5 elements or 4 elements. And I think in Chinese medicine, herbal medicine, they work with these, right? Like our friend Brandon Amalani has these different things, fire, water. What is it? What are the 5 elements? Wood, fire, earth, water.
Metal.
So when we, for example, do herbs and we do different things like hydrogen and, different herbs, and you have a lot of great products, and we'll talk about too. And we do those, and we're working. Do those work also on the spiritual, mental, emotional level, not just physical level? Do they have to always work on everything? You can't just work on physical, like even something like magnesium. Is that affecting soul, mind, emotions as well?
Well, it has to, and then the first principle in alchemy is that there's only one substance. And then from the substance comes the multiplications of all the parts that we think of as parts, but they aren't really parts.
They aren't really parts. They're one, right? It's just one.
Yeah. It's just an appearance. However, because our consciousness has the free will to create the appearance of parts and the experience of parts,
right,
then, of course, that's the beginning of all our problems and illnesses. So
that's where we went wrong, right? Is when we start separating them. Oh, there's something wrong with my ankle, and I know it's my ankle, it's not me, or whatever,
So exactly. So there is a way to create medicines that have all three attributes in equal or different proportionate measure, depending what you're trying to do, of sulfur, mercury, and salt. And every plant, every mineral that we make medicines out of, there's a way to isolate each of those parts with laboratory procedures, purify them, and then that elevates the activity into their pure original nature, and then put them back together. That's going to have a much more powerful effect on the three parts of your being. The other thing that we have to understand is all of form. Just take our human body even.
Yes, sir.
It's a product of these three attributes. And these three attributes, if you understand how to look at a body or a plant or even a rock, you'll see those three attributes in it. For instance, if you look at the cranium, it's very solid. That is what we call the neurological pole, and that represents the salt, the body of our human form. And the neurological pole then works in a polarity fashion with the metabolic pole, which is that other aspect of our individualized soul that in alchemy we call sulfur. And they kind of bounce back and forth. The sulfur is more the mid part of our body that gets a little less solid. It's where the heart, the lungs, it creates all the rhythms for the body, and things are a little bit more mobile. They can expand and contract and everything according to those rhythms. But then when you get out to our limbs, these are what ambulate us. It's what allow us to move in our outer forms. That's the mercury. That's the, that's what is it? Nike, in Greek mythology, that's the mercury. And so the mercury, when you look at somebody's body, or say if they have an illness as a physician, what I do is I understand things according to these three attributes and understand, where the problem is, what kind of problem it is. And you can very easily discern with a little practice exactly what's going on as far as an imbalance between those three attributes, and then use medicines that are going to deliberately balance out the parts that need the help the most.
Wow. We talked with Bear Paul Landau. Now, he's just not this handsome-looking fellow in the woods who, chases bears away from his dogs, but he's been to more school than is allowed by law. He's been trained with biological terrain medicine, clinical kinesiology, Japanese meridian therapy, endobiogenics, God knows what that is, functional movement specialist, craniopathy, viscerant manipulation, chiropractic medicine. Man, how long did you go to school, dude? What's up with that? You just kept going, right?
Well, I'm still in school and I'm in my 70s, so
still going, right?
Feel like I'm just starting to learn. I got into it with sports, basically because I played sports at a high level, and went to college on athletic scholarships. And I just kind of wanted to know more about the body, how to train properly, and then I got a little bit geeky. I started going to college libraries, and then ended up in pre-med and all that kind of thing. And so I really came at medicine with the mindset of a jock. I just wanted to, get the most out of my vehicle. And so I started, where most people that don't know any better would start, and that's in conventional. So I did pre-med, and then I did a certification at Stanford, and then I went to naturopathic college.
Oh.
And, that's where I got introduced to classical homeopathy, Chinese medicine. But they were not licensing naturopaths back then. By this time, we're in the early 70s. And so I went to chiropractic college just to get an alternative license, because I couldn't work in the hospital anymore if I was doing alternative medicine. And, I was more in emergency services. So anyway, that's a long story. But then from there, I did a lot of postdoctoral and osteopathic techniques and, and all the things you mentioned.
Yeah.
But bioterrain medicine was the core, because that's the old European system that emanates from anthroposophy and the original, work of Beauchamp that disproved the germ theory long ago. And then that led into a lineage of people that developed microscopes, live cell, Gunther Enderlein, and then Gaston Naessens. I studied with him. He's in Belgium. And so I learned from that school, which is bioterrain medicine, which is there's no disease, there's no pathogens we call germs, that cause disease. It's an ecosystem. And if there's a problem, you put the ecosystem back in balance rather than making war on all the things that, are doing it to you, which again brings you back into victim consciousness.
Well, if you don't believe in germs, and you're obviously a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, and you are a threat to this country. I just want you to know that.
And I'm very proud of that.
I know you are. That's why I told you that. Whoa. Okay, can you take a break? We want to take a break here? Yeah, see if you can gather up a couple pictures on your little computer there, and we show everybody where you are while we do the commercial, okay?
Okay.
See what you can do. See what you can come up with. He's cool, man. Don't you love talking to this fellow? Bear Paul Lando. His website is alphavedic.com. He's got some great products, and we'll tell you about those. If you care to join us, ask him a question. Like, what's it all about, Alfie? You can ask him that. Patrick at oneradionetwork.com or 888-663-6386. Bear mentioned oxygen is one of our favorite things ever. I recall an ancient book called Dialogues with the Masters, and it was by Paul Twitchell, who is the man who brought out Eckankar, My Spiritual Path, into physical reality. And this was a book in the 60s, and Rebazar Tars is a spiritual master. His body, he's had it over 700 years, so if you don't think you can live a long time, talk to Rebazar. He'll tell you how to do it. And he's a spiritual master that helps people all over the place in all different realities. And he was talking about hydrogen as being the very first manifestation of divine spirit. The very first one. In the beginning was the Word, and I guess then they did something. But hydrogen is one of the big ones. Well, the first ones. He said that in the book. And I have that written down somewhere. But anyway, this is about hydrogen. If you'd like to get yourself some, and you can breathe it and make your own water, and it'll be fun. We believe by experience and the literature to back it up that distilled water bubbled with hydrogen is a very good way to go. George Wiseman is an authority on hydrogen.
98% of my fluid intake of all beverages has been distilled water that's been bubbled with the Brown's gas. I am now younger biologically than I was back then. This is why I'm saying that a lot of what happens with spring water, for example, is you get not only, you might get the hydrogen, but you'll get minerals that are not necessarily bioavailable. A lot of places has excess calcium, for example. It ends up with calcium deposits in the body because you're getting too much calcium, even if it is bioavailable. Now that I've been inhaling the hydrogen, I find that I get my major nutrition, which is the hydrogen, calorie-free. So I was able to lose a few extra pounds. The cells won't regenerate. You won't have stem cells and that sort of thing if you haven't got enough hydrogen. Your cells have a certain life, and they're shutting down if they're not getting their hydrogen. They're literally dehydrating.
That's where the word comes from. Oh, go figure. Dehydration. Which is dehydrogen.
Exactly.
Whoa. Maybe you'd like to eat a little less food and stay hydrated. We know how important hydration is. It's like key. The AquaCure machine bubbles hydrogen gas in your water and also breathe it in your body. 10% off promo. Actually, I'm going to interrupt you, Patrick, you talk show host good guy. It is now 20% off, special deal, 20% off. And just go to oneradionetwork.com. Use promo code ONERADIO. OneRadio. You'll get 20% off on the AquaCure machine. Now, George's machine costs a bit more than most. However, and George has said this himself, he says there's a lot of great hydrogen machines out there. He believes he makes the best. He's been doing it probably longer than any of them. And he helps people that call him say, how do you make, he'll help anybody. He's really got a great consciousness about money and how that all works. He just does his thing and it all works out for him because that's the way it works, right? Anyway, he has put safety features into his machine that most they do not have. And hydrogen is a very, very powerful molecule or atom or whatever it is. Bear will tell you what it is. I'm not geeky enough to know, but you can. So you want to have want to make sure you have a machine that if it gets low or it gets high or whatever, it turns off, sounds an alarm. So they have some safety features that many of the machines do not. So you'll feel safe and happy doing this. I breathe as much as I can when I'm working on my screenplays down there, and you can rebound and do exercise and with a 25-foot cannula. I really think, and think of it as a food. I get emails a lot, and people say, well, will the hydrogen kill parasites? It doesn't kill anything. It just is a food. Just like the stars eat hydrogen for breakfast, then it's a food. And so, you'll eat less food too, probably. Anyway, check it out. Promo code ONERADIO, 20% off. Previously, with our friend Brandon Amalani of Shen Blossom.
A good example of this also is like the Hoshiwu formula. That is, that's a new one that came out. It's really good because it's a blood builder. A lot of people don't understand that Hoshiwu is actually toxic if it's not prepared correctly. So I wanted to come out with one that not only features the Hoshiwu as the king herb in the formula, but it's prepared of a minimum of 14 days. Usually we try and get 20, 21 days of cooking it. So you can think of it as like it's in a slow cooker with black beans. And it's basically just cooking down and deactivating some of those liver toxic compounds. So we do use that as like the bulk of the formula, but we basically put a lot of like mature ginseng root, like in our root extract. We have the fermented and hydrolyzed pearl powder, reishi stem, and it's got Shuti Hong, which is like a Rehmannia type family. We got both the prepared warm stuff and then the cool stuff to kind of balance it out in the sense so it doesn't become sticky. If you get a good quality Hoshiwu that's properly prepared, it definitely has some invigorating qualities to it and makes you feel relaxed, but yet fully vigorous and energized.
Now, that's the kind of Hoshiwu that you would like, right? Really nice products, as you can hear. If you'd like to order Hoshiwu or the other products, click on Shen Blossom right there on the front page, oneradionetwork.com. Brandon's a really cool guy, Chinese medicine fellow. He's due to come back on, and he's just a real sweetheart. Anyway, and we've known Brandon since, maybe 15 years ago when we first came in contact with Daniel Vitalis. And he was doing some work with Daniel Vitalis. So it's a good guy and a great company. Quick reminder that if you believe food prices are going, have you seen? Yeah. Go to the store and you'll see. Anyway, we think that inflation is here to stay for a long time because of the way we know and understand the monetary system. This whole thing with China and Russia and the BRICS nation doing their own reserve currency, and that's in the works. That could do some real strains on the dollar. We'll see. Who knows? And this could mean that inflation could even get higher. So if you want to get some gold and silver coins, I know Fred Deshevsky for 25 years. Fred used to be Andrew Goss's partner rather. His number is 800-878-2646. They only deal in numismatic coins, just real American money made at the mint. They don't do bricks or blocks or stuff like that. When you get rich and famous, well, then you can buy those from somebody else. But check it out, 800-878-2646. It's a great way to have gold and silver coins in your possession, and you just put them in your possession, bury them, or put in your underwear drawer, whatever you want to do, and then, if gold and silver goes up a lot or whatever, you'll be glad you did. 800-878-2646.
Broadcasting from the beautiful Hill Country in Texas, this is OneRadioNetwork.com.
Bear Paul Londo, Dr. Bear Paul Londo, naturopathic doc, and all kinds of cool things. Thank you so much for coming on the show this morning. I appreciate it, really do. Did you find a picture of your place? A lot of fun
already.
Huh?
I was looking for some. I've got a bunch of pictures are on a different computer. Can you play a video?
I can do
2 minutes.
Sure, I can do a video, whatever you got. Pictures, send me whatever you got. I'll put it up. No.
Tell me how to do this.
Just send it to Patrick at OneRadioNetwork.com. Send a link.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah, even you could do that. Just an attachment, like a MOV or whatever it is, video. We can play it. Sure, baby. Or pictures, whatever you got. If you'd like to be on the show and ask a question or comment, Patrick at OneRadioNetwork.com, 888-663-6386, 888-663-6386. Talk more about money and the dollar and Russia and China tomorrow with legendary investor Jim Rogers and also Matthew Ehret. He'll be on a little bit later, I think around noon or so. And he has been doing a lot of research into China and Russia and what they were up to. You find something?
Yeah, I put that in a chat.
Well, I've got it in. You got an email though, because the chat thing.
Yeah,
that's above my pay grade.
I put you an email too.
I don't know how to do that. Let me see.
You've got an email coming.
YouTube, I can do this one easy. So what is this one? Tell me what we're going to do, and I'll get it set up.
You probably don't want to play the whole thing. I don't know how long, maybe 2-3 minutes, but
it's only 3 minutes.
Okay, it's a trailer for the new documentary, but I think the first few seconds just has some scenery in it. That's the only thing I could think of offhand.
Okay. Oh yeah, because we want to mention that anyway. Well, go ahead and plug this documentary so when they see it, people can maybe go. So people came out and they did a documentary on your place, right?
Yes, they did.
Wow, that's so cool. And where can people see this?
They can see it on Iconics. I'm getting another little thing here for you if that one doesn't work.
I got it already. I got it ready to go. Iconics?
Iconics, which is... Yeah, it's David Icke's family, their operation.
That's cool. He is so cool.
And they've become good friends.
Oh, great. ICKONICS.com. And it's called The Magical Land. And you pay a few bucks and you can watch this documentary, right? I'll show you the trailer. Let's watch the trailer here. Wait a minute. Let me start it again. There it is.
People are the rightful stewards of this plane. It's our job not to just take care of it and leave it in better shape than when we came here, but also to make it more magnificent. I believe all of our problems have started as we've become more and more disconnected from nature. And there's a lot of talk these days about the biome, a living ecosystem inside of ourselves and somehow in communication with the biome of agriculture. From day one, I was always considered a bit of a troublemaker by my teachers and my parents. And, in hindsight, I think I understand that a little bit because there's something in me, for whatever reason, that just didn't want to conform. I was bored with the normal schooling and the way things were done. And I just always wanted to search things out myself and make up my own mind. When I was 9 years old, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, a very proud, energetic woman, and I watched her over a 4-year period just reduced to a shell of her former self. And of course, she had adopted conventional medicine, chemo, nuclear, and so forth. It just basically destroyed her body. And I can't help but believe that that had an impact on me that largely shaped not just my career choice, but how I chose to practice my profession.
We could see as the world of medicine went into more drugs, we felt like, no, we could see even back then that it needs to get back to balance, back to what nature provides for us. And so part of what we're doing here is to go back to the roots of mankind and its collaboration with Mother Earth.
If you just observe, there's an absolutely breathtaking magic of symbiosis that occurs in the forest. It's diversity at its best.
It's funny, when I lived in Los Angeles, I never thought I would be someone who's practicing permaculture every day and planting my own seeds and have a greenhouse like this and having my kids grow their own food.
It's so important, and so much you can learn just from growing, farming, and observing. Then you'll know exactly how the body works as well.
Wow. Really beautiful. Good job. Boy, you're in a paradise there, brother. I tell you what, man. Aren't you? That's great. So that's called The Magical Land, and you all can watch the whole thing if you choose to, and we'll play this again. I'll just close it out for a minute. Hold on a second. And it's at Iconics, David Icke's organization. That's cool. I didn't know David had his own little thing going there. Iconics. Let me stop it here. Okay. It's called ICKONICS. David, what a cool guy. I mean, he was on this whole idea that how the body works in the mind and projection and hologram. I mean, like 30 years ago, right? He was on it. People just thought he was crazy as a loon, but he's not. No.
Yeah, we used to put on events in the mid-'90s where we would bring a lot of information. It's more the pre-internet. It wasn't available to people back then. And we started doing some in the stateside here, and we kept getting busted by the FBI because we're actually, bringing too much truth out. So we moved them offshore, started having these huge events where we bring 4,000 or 5,000 people in from all over the world. In foreign jurisdictions. And David Icke was always one of our feature speakers back then. Him, G. Edward Griffin, Ron Paul came out a couple times before he was a Republican. He's an original libertarian. So, we've been at it a while. And then as far as this lifestyle, living off grid, my wife and myself started in about 75 because we were seeing the handwriting on the wall then. Right. And we just didn't... we just didn't like living in cities.
We're talking with Bear Paul Londo, Dr. Bear Paul Londo, and if you like to join us, email Patrick at oneradionetwork.com. Also, you can call 888-663-6386. So you're totally off the grid. Panels, batteries. I was off the grid 25 years ago, and my batteries went to heaven after about 8 years, and I didn't have the budget to, get the batteries. So the panels are still up there. But talk a bit about the battery technology now. What kind of batteries are you using, and how long are they going to last for you?
Well, you have the new lithiums. It lasts a lot longer. They're ultra expensive, but we have a battery bank. It's just the old-fashioned ones, but it serves us fine. We have a really state-of-the-art system. The batteries, we just choose for certain reasons to use the old-school ones, and we replace them probably about every 8 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Solar energy, it's good in that it does afford you some autonomy. On the other hand, it's kind of crude in its own way too.
Yes, sir.
There are much better technologies out there, and we're actually working on some of those, and working with people that are working on more refined levels of energy that are truly free. But in the meantime, right now, we've got some new panels. We've got all the best inverter technology, and we've got about 16 batteries, which is enough to run our house here. And it's great because it does allow you to live out in the boonies and make a way for yourself.
You betcha. And your water source do you have a spring?
We have springs and river.
Whoa, man!
So we're on the Smith River. That
beautiful river we saw in the video, right?
Yeah, it's considered right now the cleanest undammed river in the United States, in continental United States.
Is that right?
And it's phenomenal. When you go right down our little, like when you saw that little house perched up on the, and you're looking at the drone footage there, that's the little cabin right there we have on the property. And, I don't think it showed on our main house, but just right down the embankment is a river, and we have these amazing swimming holes, they're 25 feet deep, and they're big trout, and swimming around, and it's ice cold all year round because a lot of it actually comes subterranean. And the area here, we've got a confluence of 3 mountain ranges. And it makes it very rugged territory. There's areas here, wilderness, where nobody ever goes or probably has ever been. When you get up in the high country, you've got alpine lakes and everything. But we actually have some proximity. We're a ways away from the coast. But if you follow the river downstream, it'll go through all the redwood parks and eventually out to the ocean about an hour away. So you have to get up a narrow river canyon. So when you're up here, it feels mountainous, but you have a more of a proximity to the coast at the same time. But it's a great area. And you see creatures here that are very unique that you don't see anywhere else because there's never been any development for miles and miles and miles. They can't develop it. It's just too rugged.
What kind of creatures?
Well, of course, you'll always hear everybody has a Bigfoot story.
Yeah.
But there are larger creatures. We've got bear, elk, deer, a lot of lions. You see black panthers every so often. Wow. You'll see things like giant salamanders that you won't see anywhere else in the world. You can go out here at night in the farm and you'll see, they're about 1 foot long and they have a whole different markings in those little orange and brown kind of small salamanders. And then there are lakes up in the high country where people that know how to get up in those, they'll see salamanders that are 6-7 feet long up there.
Ooh, really?
Yeah, just kind of crazy stuff. You'll see cats. They're considered cats, but they look more like a cross between a monkey and a cat, and you'll see those bouncing around in the trees. We've got a bald eagle nest right up here. I can see out my window, and they live up there, and you'll see literal flocks of bald eagles circling. And so wildlife is amazing here. And then plant life is very unique. We wildcraft for mushrooms all the time, just about every mushroom variety, herbs, in the surrounding area. And then our signature herb that we grow at the farm here is Jiao Gulan, also called Gynostemma. But Jiao Gulan is big in Asian medicine and considered a superior adaptogen, better than ginseng or any of the ones that are more popular out there.
Yeah, and you put a lot of that's in a lot of your teas that I have, right? The Jiao Gulan.
Yeah, it's a core ingredient in all the teas.
In all the teas that you make. Wow. Bear Paul Londo is with us. Here's an email for you. Thanks for having Bear back on. I really enjoy when he comes on. Can you please ask if he could kind of share some insights, tips on the building and of conversion to a more positive, natural, healing, high-frequency home dwellings, like directions off the grid, free energy, building materials. So you got some sources people can kind of look at when they want to kind of do a little bit with what you're doing, get in that direction?
Off the top of my head, I would say the one source is our website, which we've got a regular website now, but we're going to a private membership website. And in the membership section, there's going to be all those kinds of resources.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we've been doing this for about 50 years. So it's we don't like read one book or have any books off the top of my head right now, that are the go-to. We've just learned through experience. And we're also doing different kinds of architecture here. I'm going to put up a sound studio pretty soon that's going to be all natural materials, and also designed for acoustics. But the geometry will be as such that you'd want to, live in it. It's, follows the principles of biogeometry in the old Indian system of sacred architecture. That the proportions and materials are such that it creates a frequency that's very high in what we call in biogeometry BG3, which is the golden mean energy, mathematically 1.6. So now I'm in, my house here, it's not built according to sacred geometry, but it is all natural materials. But what I do is I take biogeometry and create an abundance of BG3 by the way everything is placed, the type of materials, the orientation of everything from furniture to windows placed in certain spots.
Wow.
So with the science of biogeometry, you can do all that. In fact, you can go into any house, even in the city, and make it more impervious to all the Wi-Fi and that sort of thing, but also create an abundance of this golden mean energy that is going to overwhelm any of the noxious stuff that you find in most homes, especially in urban environments.
So you can do that just with the geometry, building materials, and such.
Yes.
Wow.
So maybe to answer that individual's question, I would say go check out biogeometry. They even have introductory courses that allow you to learn these things that you can do in your own home, no matter what kind of home or materials you start with in the first place. But, always best if you can build with non-toxic material. And then if you can go to the next level and actually create the geometric proportions that make your home a literal healing chamber, that regenerates, rather than otherwise, then, of course, that's amazing. That's what we're doing here now. And the whole Alpha Vedic project is about creating prototypes for all those things.
That's so cool. Jimmy wants to know, I've read a lot about red light therapy. Does Bear think it's beneficial for various organs of the whole body? And if so, what frequency would I want to purchase? I guess you can get lights with different frequencies, right? Would you do the whole, chicken lamps you get at the Home Depot, or would you get a light with a particular frequency?
I would get the lights with a particular frequency. Now, there are companies that put out red light therapy devices that are already designed to do that. Now, I haven't had a lot of experience personally with those, but I hear a lot of good things. Now, there's substances that are becoming popular now that you can take in ethylene blue. And when you take that, which, helps you really create more of an abundance of ATP and body energy and do a lot of other good things in conjunction with red light therapy, people are getting really good effects. What I had in my clinic days, we had an international clinic and we saw people from all over the world, and we only took very difficult cases. And we had a sound light room in that clinic. So people would come first, we'd analyze them by their voice, the tonal qualities of their voice. And then we had technologies that would provide proper tones to bring them into balance. But then I did that in conjunction with acupuncture and table layouts where the tones would go through the grid, and then they go through, the actual acupuncture placements. And then over it, we had different sound and light frequencies that would project through and create geometric forms. So long story short, it created a combination of all these factors that we could customize to create a specific effect that person needed. And it would really create an amazing impact that would, be a catalyst to help all the bioterrain medicine, everything else we did work.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's great. Yeah, I think there's a website that I know I purchased a lamp. I think it's called Red Light Man or something. And it's these really nice, beautiful little lights at different frequencies. 600 or so hertz, I think, is one that I've used. Paul is in the UK. Say hi to the Queen Mom. Hi, Queen. Just kidding. How would you treat, I think she's 112 and she doesn't tell anybody she's that old. How would you treat glaucoma? I'm interested in homeopathy and any other treatments. First off, what's your understanding physiologically wise or spiritually what glaucoma is about, Bear?
So what we really need to do is appreciate that every organ, and especially sense organs, have two polarities. And the health of those organs and sense organs require a balance between those two polarities. When we are using them in a balanced and unified action, not only do we shortchange ourselves as far as the data that we can perceive through that sensory organ, but it's also going to create all the maladies that we can come up with or possibly think of. So there's two polarities in the eyeball, for instance. You have the neurological pole, which is the receptive. It's just incoming data, and it registers in our nervous system. Neurotransmitters, with the aid of neurotransmitters in the neurology, it deciphers that information. The other pole that most of us lose, beyond being a toddler, is that more projection pole. It's the metabolic pole, we call it, in anthroposophic medicine. And that metabolic pole is taking your imagination, which is your true creative abilities, what we're here to do in the first place, and projecting that out. And then in a balanced fashion, as far as incoming and what you're projecting out, then not only can you perceive things that most people aren't picking up with their eyesight, but you're also going to be creating manifestation just through your sight. Now, when those poles are out of balance because you're using one in particular at the expense of the other, then that is going to create distortions that can create pressure buildups that we call glaucoma, create macular degeneration. It'll create astigmatism, nearsightedness, farsightedness. Depending on the particular qualities and inclinations of that individual, it's going to create all the above. But if you want to simplify it, and just understand that if you go and do your inner practices, get back in touch with those, abilities to project and manifest through your eyes and balance it out rather than just being receptive and operating just on the neurological pole, then things get a lot better. And the neurological pole, it's like the yin and the yang, in Chinese medicine, you have the Shen and the Ko cycle. One is kind of breaks things down, the other regenerates. Well, the neurological pole, because it creates neurotransmitters in order to work through the neurology to do whatever it needs to do, those substances break down. So it's actually the Ko cycle in Chinese medicine. It's a degenerative effect. Now, that's not bad if you have equal measure of the regenerative side. That's the metabolic pole, the projection facility that we have through our eyeballs. And that is going to keep the eyes from breaking down and degenerating. And it's the same of every single organ in our body. So there are ways medically, where I could take 100 glaucoma people, treat each one of them different, because everybody got there in a slightly different way or in a radically different way. But just if you start with that fundamental understanding about bringing balance, just like in Chinese medicine between Shen Ko, then that's the place where you have to start. Then the more clever you are at customizing and understanding how that individual got there in the first place, then you're not treating glaucoma, because in bioterrain medicine you don't treat a condition, you treat the environment, you treat the ecology, you treat the psyche of that individual that's putting all those things into effect in the first place.
Wow. Bear Paul Londo, and if you have an email question, patrick@oneradionetwork.com, or you can call. Julie wants to know, does Bear think that we can cure a particular issue in our body with just herbs and such without dealing in the spiritual realm that you and Patrick were talking about at the beginning of the show? It's a good question. It's a good question, Julie.
It's an amazing question.
Yeah, it's great.
And I am of the bias that there's nothing externally to cure us, nor is there anything to cure in the first place.
I like that.
So let me explain that.
Okay.
There is nothing to cure because, of course, we're talking about pathology. Pathologies don't exist. There's only imbalances and deficiencies. And when we understand how to take care of those, then things take care of themselves. You know, the terrain is back into a regenerative state.
Mm-hmm.
Then on the other hand, if you are taking herbs and things, you have to understand they can be very helpful if you know how they work. They're going to work better when you are using them as a source for universal patterns that will balance out the imbalances in your own self. And that the only way those can work is if your consciousness has a cooperative relationship with them and is not looking at them to fix you.
Wow.
So as soon as we go into the state of mind that something is going to fix me, then we're divorcing ourselves from the only thing that can fix us, which is ourselves. So if you want to use those as supports, whether it's a doctor, whether it's an herb, a nutrient, those can be helpful. But what you're really talking about is another toroidal field and mixing them and matching those toroidal fields, whether the toroidal field is from an herb, a doctor, or so forth, a homeopathic remedy to create balance and understanding that is your consciousness, it is your source, that is the only thing that's going to curing, and you're intelligently incorporating parts of your reality in order to facilitate your own spirit.
Well, it's beautifully said.
So would that
state of consciousness need to be with the practitioner as well as the patient?
Absolutely. That's why doctors have such a... I was in emergency medicine for just normal
Wait a minute, you froze up. You froze up a minute, so let's start again. So start with emergency medicine. Go ahead.
Yeah, so with emergency medicine, you know, there's a time and place for everything. Did I freeze up again?
Again, yeah.
Okay. So they apply crisis intervention to everything.
Yes.
Rather than understanding how to work with living systems. So in the medical process, what they're imagining is that the doctor has the ability to fix somebody else, and that person then becomes passive rather than a proactive participant. And then furthermore, that person has a disease which can't be cured without taking some synthetic, drug or something that's going to throw everything out of whack, or do some invasive procedure,
yes.
At the expense of the whole being. So, that's it. We're naturopaths and doctors, we've been kind of seduced into the same state of mind where we look at germs, we look at diseases, and then we just say, well, we're going to cure something with those modalities. Yeah. And all we're doing is becoming green allopaths. Maybe it's a little less toxic, but we keep people in the same old superstitious box.
Wow, green allopath. It's a beautiful, and that's true, isn't it? And I know you're not being critical because they just, yeah, man. So do you think that just a thought or an idea that we humans have bought into the idea that anything is going to really fix us, we are just setting up a condition in our state of consciousness that inhibits healing? Just doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not going to think and grow rich either. It's not just about thoughts. It's about our emotions. Emotions give the velocity or manifestation. So you can read all the books on self-healing and know all the ideas, take the right stuff. But if your emotional state is not taken care of, then you're just going to keep recreating the same old thing. And emotions always supersede thoughts once we're programmed. So, imagine you're in a state where something scares you or gives you a start. Well, that emotion was way ahead of the thought that said, "Oh, there's a bear." It's just that acts first. So emotions are, we're emotional beings. And when you get into like the subject of New German medicine, which you and I have talked about, you've had Dr. Melissa Sell, who's great. That really goes a far way into understanding how those emotional insults to our psyche will trigger neurological events and then biological programs that we mistake as disease. Now, there's a whole nother level beyond German New Medicine that tells you how all that stuff got there in the first place, too. But German New Medicine is a great advancement in bioterrain medicine.
Yeah. And as you said, we've talked to Melissa Sell from time to time. Doc, let's see. This is from Doc Frank. I guess he's a doc. Got to get him back on again. Okay, we will. Okay. How do you... this is from telephone number. That's all I got. How do you check your voice for illness? My voice is raspy and I have a cough. Check your voice for illness.
In Chinese medicine, if you look at the 5 elements, if you go far back into the original writings of the Shanghan Lun, your keynotes. So, earth is F, wood is A, fire, heart is C sharp, and so on and so forth. Water G, metal G, water D. So you're talking about tones. Now, in Chinese medicine, practitioners learn to look at a lot of things, but also you listen to the timbre of somebody's voice. And this might be a little bit beyond what the question was about, but you can really tell a lot about the imbalances on an organ system level by listening to somebody's voice. Now, if a person's voice is raspy, you just go into crude level physiology and maybe understand how things are affecting the larynx or the bronchioles and that sort of thing too. But that's going to bring you back into the 5 elements as far as, what you need to do to fix that at the same time. Long ago, when I first constructed my sound room for the first time, as a formally because I studied it a long time, but when we had the sound room in our, clinic, I brought in a woman by the name of Sherry Edwards.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of her. Yeah.
Now, Sherry Edwards is one of these kind of gifted people that's just born where she could hear tones in people's voices, and she did such remarkable things that the military actually brought her in and studied her. And it wasn't a real negative thing because they actually supported her in developing technology that would help ascertain the different tonal qualities in somebody's voice, and then help people without her gift provide the missing tone that could really help that individual. And in fact, I had some of that technology as part of my sound room. So there's a lot of great sound work on, the tuning forks are a fantastic way for people to, in a general way, treat themselves as far as just general frequencies, Schumann frequency, Fibonacci frequencies, and so forth. And then in the hands of a skilled practitioner, I went away from needles a long time ago. I just used tuning forks. Yeah, so the tuning forks I use I use more the pentonic Chinese scale, which are the actual keynotes. But then the keynotes, just like all the elements in nature, don't have the harmonics. Because the harmonics are on that astral level, that emotional level that we're talking about. So you have to have a way to interject into the body the acoustics that have the harmonics, which are the sound or even the inaudible sound between the keynotes. And so in acupuncture, I would do my diagnosis and then figure out which keynotes that are based on the 5 elements and use the meridian points, which are like portals, to deliver those acoustics in on those other layers. But then I would always do it in chords. So, for instance, if a person needed an energy sedated, then I would create a chord with 2 tuning forks at the same time that would create a harmonic third. Or if I want to stimulate, I'd create a harmonic fifth. So now you're getting that information that's lost in just a single keynote. You're, reproducing the harmonics between the 2 keynotes with a chord, just like good music. That's why it sounds good. But then you have a way to use the actual acoustic channels of the body to deliver it to the subtle bodies and not just have it audible in the ears.
Wow. Eileen McCusick has done a lot of great work with tuning
and
forks.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
And we on our podcast last week, so we know all about this.
Oh, you talked to Eileen recently?
Yeah, she was our podcast guest last week on AlphaCast.
Oh, cool, man. Yeah, it's been years since we've talked to her, Eileen McCusick. So you have
She's doing
taken
great work.
the needle thing from acupuncture to another level of just
Yes.
yeah. And so where do you put the tuning forks in relation to where you would put the needle? Right there? Where the
Same spot.
same spot?
Yeah.
And you're just putting them right above the spot? Or are you actually touching the skin with the tuning fork?
You actually touch the skin.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or you can hold it right above.
Yeah. Wow.
Either way. Yeah.
In the beginning was the word, right? The sound.
It's all sound. And sound, again, is all about the water ether, that third level, the first fixed element above the earth that receives from the air and from the fire. So again, we go back to alchemy and going through the ethers. So the water element is, or that water level, the ether, also has to do with oxygen, if we want to look at it molecularly. And it also is that an ether that we call numbers, and we also call it the sound ether. We call it numbers because just like in biogeometry, we Dr. Karim discovered that if you put a certain amount of objects in a group, it creates a resonance different than a different number of objects. So back in ancient times, they understood how to create resonance with numbers of objects. We always talk about numerology and a lot of people are really into numbers. Well, the resonance and the effects of numbers aren't in the abstract symbols. They're in the amount that symbol represents. That's why when I create planting beds and, in that little film clip you saw from from the air, you see all these spirals, and if you count all the numbers of things there, they're all specific numbers to create a resonance, because that makes the plants, the trees grow better.
And all of this energy, this sound and light, however you want to say it, wavelengths are in the kale. They're just there. They're part of the kale state of consciousness, if you will. Right?
And kale has all the characteristics of kale because, well, first off, it's part of a spirit oversoul, a real consciousness that is projecting that botanical species into our realm, and that consciousness behind that species has a very definite thought about what
it's
that
doing
species is going to be doing, what attributes it has, what it looks like, and what kind of functions and what sort of help it can be to us on the ground, because that's what plant species were originally intended to do in the first place.
It's almost like God or divine spirit is expressing itself through us and plants and trees and squirrels and bears and dogs.
Right. But different than a plant overspecies like kale. All kale's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Different variations, but pretty much same. Us in a human form, we are not part of a larger oversoul. We are an individualization of consciousness, which makes us a little bit more special and a little more autonomous than just some kale growing out in the yard there.
Are we special? Does that mean we're special? Well, good. I hope we're special. They used to say that in Texas. Well, you're really special. That's great. Okay, this is from Lance. He's in Escondido, California. You should just get a medal for even living in California, Lance. But here we go. Can you ask Mr. Lando what brand of microscope he would recommend for a golden, talk to us like a golden retriever beginner wanting to do live blood work, dark field? Do you have some ideas on what he could buy? Golden retriever beginner?
I was just, I'm setting up a new lab here. You know, our present farm is about 6 years old. We left our old one because we outgrew it. And so now we're in a bigger, more pristine space. And part of that is I'm creating a microscope lab.
Wow.
Now, I have my old microscope that I had, God, I don't know how long, 30 years or something, and I'm retiring it. I'm not aware of all the new microscopes that are out in dark field circles, but I know they have a lot to be left to be desired. I was talking with Adam Bigelson the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Who is one of the halves
boys,
of the Bigelson brothers.
They're great, aren't they?
Yeah, and you know, they are very expertise in live cell microscopy.
Mm-hmm.
And so he sent me a new some information on a new microscope, which both of us are now attempting to procure funding to get, because they're about $70,000.
Whoa.
But what it's going to allow, I'm sorry I'm not able to answer the question directly, but since you opened that door, if you know you're in the typical $2,000 to $6,000 range, just go out on the internet and do the best you can, I guess. But that wouldn't serve me in the kind of work I do. So this other microscope that we are going to be getting allows you to do live cell, but also phase contrast, and also create three-dimensional pictures out of it, and a lot of other crazy things. But it also allows you to go into the realm of normie science and look at what they look at, you know, the sort of thing I had to learn initially. And it will allow us, by being able to have the mixed technologies in the same scope, there's a lot of conjecture about, well, what's this and what do you see here? What's in the vaccine vials, you know? Well, with this microscope, we're going to be able to go in and just say, well, here's what it is.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it's another whole boy. So that's the level of technology that I'm going into, and Adam and Josh are going into. Yeah, as far as the typical dark field stuff that people do, you know, more lay person, and a lot of naturopaths kind of do that. You just have to look around. Also, be aware that a lot of the dark field training is really a long ways from the original German bioterrain microscopy. And there's a lot of errors in their concepts and interpretations and methodologies. And I hear a lot of people, you know, they say, oh, I just looked at my blood and they said this, and it's like, it's really kind of garbage.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's an amazing tool, but like any tool, you know, it's got to be in the right hands.
You have to be careful who you're listening to, huh?
Yeah.
We're gonna, Bear, I want to talk to people about sulfur. Can you hold on a second? Okay. Have you ever tried our sulfur? Dr. Patrick Flanagan has been regarded as one of the most important scientists in the last 50 years. We talked to him about sulfur.
There's a product called organic sulfur. And organic sulfur was put into trade in 1865 as organic sulfur. Some people call it MSM, or methyl sulfonylmethane, but most of the MSM in health food stores have been contaminated with a kind of silica that prevents its absorption by the body. But anyway, what happens is that if you take a tablespoon of MSM and of the organic sulfur in hot water in the morning and a tablespoon in the afternoon, it sulfates 192 different compounds, heavy metals from the periodic table, and once it sulfates them, I'm talking about radioactive elements and other things. Once it sulfates them, these sulfates cannot stay in the human body for more than 12 hours.
And what Dr. Flanagan just mentioned is one of the key reasons why our sulfur is different from most out there, Amazon, no matter where you go, because it's pure. Click and order, front page, oneradionetwork.com. Would you like a discount? Just email me, 4 pounds or more, a discount. Patrick at oneradionetwork.com. Otherwise, 2-pound orders, United States, Canada, worldwide, 3 prices. Click and order, oneradionetwork.com. That's me, Patrick, oneradionetwork.com. Yeah, you can get more than... It's really a good product. It's a nice product. I like to take it every day. Not that what I do matter, but, you know, we've talked quite a bit with Stephanie Seneff, MIT, on the whole glyphosate sulfur dysregulation. So I think it's a good thing to take and a reasonable. And hair, skin, and nails. Your nails just get like little Rockies, you know, little Rockies. So try it. I think you'll really enjoy it. One of the technologies other than the hydrogen that we like to do regularly in sulfur is take an infrared sauna. And we've been promoting this sauna here. It's a personal guy, and you just sit in it. You can see the picture here if you're on video. If you're on audio, just go to our website. You sit in here. I've never done the reading thing with little holes. That looks interesting. I like to just talk to God when I'm in mine every night before bed, then jump in a cold shower, do a little Wim Hof thing. Yow! That's fun. But these are nice units. They're made in Taiwan at a medical university. They've won several awards for their technology. So it's just not another infrared sauna. They've really done some whoop-de-doops with their, and that's a technical term, with the technology of this infrared sauna. As I said, they've won a few awards, if you're into awards. But it's a very nice one, very quiet, extremely low electromagnetic fields. They've got some magnetic energy from the ground to the bottom of the chair. So I just sit in a lotus thing. But even if your legs are down in the magnetic thing, it's not, I mean, you get the same thing driving in a car, or standing next to your refrigerator. So don't worry about it. But it's a really good price. The price that we offer is $12.95 delivered in the lower 48. For those of you who live in Oregon, that means, just kidding, that means just not Alaska or Hawaii. We ship them all over the world. Canada, we have a lot of Canadian listeners, and we can get one to you at $14.95 delivered to you in the great country of Canada that's going through some growing pains. But, you know, everybody's working through it. So there you have it, $12.95 tax title license, oneradionetwork.com. Just email me. The only way to get the price is to email me, oneradionetwork.com. That's it.
Broadcasting from the beautiful Hill Country in Texas, this is OneRadioNetwork.com.
With Dr. Bear Paul Londo, alphavedic.com. Tell folks, let me put up your site so they can see your website. Tell folks about all the products that you have. Give yourself a little plug there. You got a lot of great products.
Sure. You know, I like a lot of your products, and I agree with everything Dr. Flanagan was saying about the sulfur. It's a good idea to take that. Also, I still want to get that hydrogen machine from you. I've been buying new lab equipment lately, so I haven't.
Let me know.
But the hydrogen's on the top of my list. I really want to get that. So our products, you know, we aren't a symptom-specific, type of product line. What they are is they're whole food derived. They're very expensively manufactured in small volume. A lot of the products have things we actually grow here on the farm. I have things that are very useful for people that are, interested in getting all the things we're inundated these days out of their body. Just with the chemtrailing and everything else. So I that typically a long time ago, we didn't have to do that sort of thing. But I think these days we really have to understand, look, they're throwing the kitchen we have to deal with it. So we do have a lot of products that help you deal with that, but they're designed, again, to be in a intense, so they can't throw you out of balance, and they'll actually create regeneration versus just dredging things out of you, which can create imbalances. So we have all those. We have the T line, and in my alchemy lab, which is a very sophisticated chemistry lab, I will be making a lot of things in there that will be available to members only. They're not really suitable for the general public. But yeah, just general nutrition, good stuff. And, there's quite a bit there, actually.
I generally do not join any club that would allow me to be in the club. But as Woody Allen said, but I want to join you when you do that thing, because that'll be fun. Bear Paul Lando is with us. Good stuff. And his teas, poo. If you like green tea, boy, you've got the Dalai Lama of teas. You really do. I love them. I've got about 5 or 6 of them. I just think they're terrific. So, so when you get this magical, you're raising funds to get this magical $70,000 telescope, could you borrow a body that supposedly, allegedly died from COVID and dig around in there and find some kind of virus with this microscope and say, there it is? Could you do that?
No, because viruses don't exist.
There you go again. I just can't get you there. You don't even want to go. Viruses don't exist. Now, you and many other people are talking about this. The Lankas of the world, Cowan, Kaufman, Sells, Vollmer, Robert O. Young, he's on it. And I don't know, do you know Mike Stone? Do you know Mike Stone? He's cool. You know him?
No, sorry.
Yeah, he's a kitchen sink virologist, but boy, he'll curl your hair when he starts talking about this. But viruses don't exist. I know we get new people all around the world all the time. They find us on UB2B or somewhere. Well, we're not on there anymore. But talk about that. I mean, how is that even possible? I mean, the entire medical community is selling the idea that viruses and bacteria are making us sick and you need to get a vaccine or an antibiotic. Otherwise, you're going to die. I mean, that's what they do. What's up with that? I mean, talk to folks like that and tell them why you believe what you believe.
The first thing I'd recommend is people watch Terrain Part 1 and Part 2.
Yes.
It was produced by Andy Kaufman, who's a good friend, and filmed by award-winning documentary maker Marcy Kravitz, who's also a good friend of ours. Been up here a lot, and I happen to be in both of those, so I give my 2 bits worth. So here's where I come from. In that movie, you'll see Andy and Tom Cowan and all the Stefan Lanka, who come at it very sound, grounded, and academic. Their rationales, and pretty much just leave it a moot point as far as do they exist or not.
We're getting we're getting a little delay again. The last word you said were whether it exists or not. Go ahead.
Oh boy, that was a long time ago, I think.
No, just not. You were saying the Cowan and the rest of they're looking them.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so as a bioterrain physician, I practice functional medicine. As an example, in the early to mid 80s, we had the whole AIDS thing going on, which also starred Dr. Fauci, right? And so I didn't know what I know now back then, but I had all these AIDS people. I had other people with so-called viral-induced conditions, Hep C and, Epstein-Barr, you name it.
Right.
But let's just talk about AIDS. So I would practice bioterrain medicine, restore their ecology, and sure enough, most of them started making improvements. But then when I figured out that their medicines were actually making them sick, when I figured out that the original batch of AIDS patients were created by things purposely downloaded in Hep B vaccines targeting the gay populations on the East and West Coast, and also populations in villages in Africa under the auspices of a smallpox vaccine. I realized, okay, there's definitely something up with that. And then when people, when we do education, we never tell people what to do, but then they elected to maybe go off their AIDS cocktails, brought to them by Dr. Fauci. Then they regained the rest of their health, and then the bioterrain medicine worked even better. So if you have a deadly virus creating something like AIDS, but then people get better with the things we did and the things we used to eliminate, then you realize the etiology of AIDS probably isn't a virus. Now, along the way, too, I also did in-house labs every visit on everybody I ever saw. And I did them myself because they're labs that you can't order in a hospital. I won't talk about the whole thing because it takes molecular findings, chemical findings in bodily fluids, but then extrapolates them into electrical equations, mathematical equations, and then helps you treat the body electrically rather than chemistry. It's a different story. One of the things I had to visualize in everybody during that test, though, is cell debris. Now, cell debris is simply broken down cells that are being eliminated. When the cell debris was of a certain level, it obviously tells you that there's cells breaking down quicker than the body's making new ones. And so whenever that happened, I was able to observe over many years that certain bodily processes and labs assays would actually reveal certain things. And what it led me to understand that those broken down cell debris were then carried all over the body. They had DNA material and other chemical messengers in there. They would stimulate live cells. So they'd actually conjugate with live cells. And those live cells would then start making stem cells, interleukin, cytokines, all the things that, initiate the whole regenerative cycle. It would create the manufacture of exosomes, things that Andy Kaufman talks about, things that are mistaken for virus because they are, could fit the criteria of what the medical people theorize as virus. The cells debris, if you just understand that you have cellular material from dead cells, DNA conjugating with live cells, well, that's kind of what a virus is supposed to do. When you look at antibodies, those antibodies are not little things that are just, manufactured in the body to create, a bullet to go attack a germ. Those were always a byproduct of this cell debris informing the live cells what they had to do to regenerate the body. So even antibodies aren't properly understood, but all of these antibodies, certain things from the mitochondria of the cells, the cell debris, the exosomes, are the things that are now mistaken for virus, but are actually a separate entity existing in nature as a virus. I was able to experience that firsthand in a functional way because when I interpreted those findings in that way and then worked with them within bioterrain medicine principles, people got better. Also, I found that you could take somebody with Hep C, which is a virus that supposedly causes liver problems. And then we treat people, their liver and their health would improve and, a lot of times get completely better. But then you still have high titers of alleged Hep C virus. So in those situations, and a lot of viral tests were always based on antibodies like HIV, which is not
positive
a virus
for HIV was,
and not anything that causes AIDS.
Right.
So you realize sometimes those titers go away, sometimes they don't, sometimes they might even increase for a while. So you realize there's no causative link between those two things. So the majority of viral tests based on antibody tests, you have to throw them out the window when you practice functional medicine for a good deal of time. And then, now we're into all this PCR nonsense and everything, which is even stupider. So
it's even worse than what it was in the 80s on the AIDS thing. The PCR is even more.
I mean, it's even more far-fetched.
Wow.
At least with the alleged antibodies, you could learn certain things as far as why those antibodies were present, and sometimes it could be useful, even though it didn't really tell you that there's a disease that was caused by something that the antibody was supposedly fighting. But the PCR has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
So stay with the AIDS thing. So they were essentially giving people, especially the gay community, a test which said you had AIDS virus, which wasn't true, and then they gave them a lot of drugs that were essentially killing them. I mean, that's the short story, isn't it?
Yeah. Initially, again, it was induced by elements within vaccines, specifically smallpox and hepatitis.
Wow.
That would initiate the breakdown of the body internally, where people would just start getting multiple cancers and things, which we then came to recognize, or to fit the criteria of an AIDS syndrome. And then, of course, we need a boogeyman. You always need to find weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
And so in this case, virus, and it's HIV. Never mind that a lot of pregnant women, have raised titers of that material that then we attribute to a virus, and all sorts of other circumstances when people are under stress, all sorts of times. And there's no causative link between the two, but they make the link because they always have to have something to blame it on, and then something that they can then patent and say this is going to, protect you from the virus or something.
Right, which is what the whole COVID thing was about too. It was a COVID virus, and now they're running with variants and subvariants and super subvariants, and it's all made up, isn't it?
And now we've got monkeypox.
A monkeypox too. Didn't even ask you about that one. The WHO just said that monkeypox is a worldwide emergency. Do you know that? So be on the lookout. Be on the lookout.
I'm getting my shots.
I'm going to get mine too. We had a great fellow, gentleman on from the great state of Oklahoma, Dr. Mark Sherwood, yesterday. And he talked a lot about this, how there are governors like DeSantis and in Oklahoma and Tennessee that are just telling the WHO, no, you guys don't have any authority over us. We don't believe you. We don't trust you. Leave us alone. This is where we're going, baby. I think the states are just going to say, no, it's okay. We're good. I'm good.
Why would you possibly trust a company that, first of all, owns half of the bureaucratic class, and then makes themselves immune to any liability, and then makes billions of dollars a day off this stuff? No conflict of interest there, of course. And then, of course, you look at some of these guys, and they just have all these interesting connections to the old Royal Society and
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. DeSantis down in Florida doing speeches saying, I don't want you even near our state, WHO. Leave us alone. Just leave us alone. We're good. He froze up again.
Okay. So I was just saying that, all these vested interests that, are immune from liability and making billions a day, probably per hour. They also have, bloodline ties to the old eugenicist families in the Royal Society and so forth that think that they have a right to kill everybody.
Yeah.
So, it might be something to look at there.
Terrell writes in, he's actually in Tulsa, in the great state of Oklahoma. We're just talking about you. Terrell wants to know, I've been following Patrick since he's been a flat earther, and I know he's crazy, but I'm beginning to think he could be onto something. Could your guest tell us, where would this stationary Earth be if it's not floating in space? And that is really a good question, Terrell. I mean, I've asked myself that. Well, okay, so is it just a state of consciousness? Is it just it just exists because it does, and it's not anywhere that we can put our finger on? What do you think? I mean, where is it? Where are we?
Well, I think the question.
It's a good question. You know, it's a good question.
No, it's amazing. I think the real question is, where does consciousness reside?
Where does consciousness reside?
It's you know, and of course, old school folks would say it's everywhere.
Yeah.
There's no location. There's no specific point. But when consciousness creates a thought form, then that creates a coordinate that is going to create the illusion of time, space, and location.
Matter, energy, time, and space. So it creates that thing we call physical reality. It creates it.
Yeah. And so if you look at our realm, whatever shape you think it is, who cares, really? I know the flat earthers get pissed off if you say it doesn't matter, but I think it's more important to understand how things function. Because when you understand how things function, and we live in a functional realm, I'm pretty convinced, then that answers a lot of questions that you're really not even going to entertain if you're just arguing about if it's round, flat,
round or
otherwise.
flat. So what do you mean how things function? Talk to the flat earthers and give your argument what they could look at rather than just being a flat earther.
Okay, so if we say it is a functional realm, and if we get into some of the concepts we've been talking about today, we realize that everything's a toroidal field.
Toroidal. Explain what that means. What does that mean, toroidal?
Again, a toroidal field is electrical forces that are going in two different directions. And if you've ever seen these animations of toroidal fields on YouTube or whatever, you see it looks like this floating donut, you know, where you've got things going in and then circulating, and it just keeps regenerating itself. Well, if you look at the waveforms that create matter in the first place, matter, or the illusion of matter, is by thought compressing data. You know, we're looking at a computer screen right now. There's, you know, I'm pretty convinced you aren't inside this screen somewhere. There's just data that's being compressed in a way.
Can't you see me? I'm here. Can't you see me?
So, you know, this data is being compressed so that we can see and talk to each other.
Right.
The same thing in toroidal field. It's called a compression of data. It creates a conical kind of affair that goes down. It also creates the illusion of time and space because it stratifies the way it goes through the ethers. And then simultaneously, it's decompressing and radiating so that the next frame of the movie can be projected. You know, you can't just freeze on one frame there. You know, when you're watching a film, it's got to keep moving. So you got to have compression and radiation. That's basic principles of waveform mechanics. Now, that dual simultaneous self-canceling cycle is a toroidal field.
Okay.
Every cell of our body is a toroidal field. The realm, if you look at Hermetic principles, as above, so below, and if you just understand basic real science, how could our realm be anything but a toroidal field? How can anything be an exception to that? So it would be pretty far-fetched to think otherwise. So now you're looking at a toroidal field and not interject all the other things we're talking about as far as different levels of ether, how manifestation occurs, how we have a place in that. Now, functionally, that's of great value. I can use that information. I can go test my soil out in the farm here, and within that context, I can understand the electrical resistance in the soil and make my plants grow by working with those vectors. I can apply it to medicine and do the same thing. I can take some of that sulfur that, you know, you were showing from Dr. Flanagan. I can go in my lab and I can create a salt of the sulfur, a sulfur of the sulfur, and a mercury of the sulfur, and, you know, create a sulfur that's going to energetically have sulfur work on all the three attributes of your being in a very powerful way.
That's pretty cool.
That's good. It's good stuff to know. That's real science.
Right, right.
So that's functional. That's why I say functional medicine. And that's why if you look at the realm as a functional technology, now you can understand how to have a good time in it, not blow yourself up, and and move the ball downfield. And maybe succeeding generations will actually start getting smarter.
Yeah. So I wonder, are you of a mind of the flat earthers talk about a firmament kind of thing? Do you think that's going on? And
Absolutely.
So then I wonder if you could fly. How high do you think that firmament is? Do we know? 100 miles? What do you think? Do we know?
I don't know those numbers. A lot of the flat earthers like Santos, Bonacci,
he's going to be on next
they're-
week again, Santos. He's out of control. I love him. He's great.
Yeah. Those guys are great for the little factoids. My mind works a little bit differently. I just, I can do stuff.
Yeah. So I wonder, what do you think then if you flew all the way up to the firmament, however high it is, and took a picture? I wonder what it would look like down there.
Okay.
You froze up again. Hold on a second. He's froze up. Bear Paul Lando is with us, alphavedic.com, and he's on a satellite there. Yeah, you froze up again. So I think you should probably maybe take a look at your little location of your dish from Elon, and maybe you're just getting interfered every now and then, because it shouldn't do that, right? Because I think your upload and download is pretty fast, but it has been freezing.
It is. It is. So, and also there's in the mountains south of us, I guess there's some fires. So it's just a little haze in the air. I don't know if that's doing anything today.
I don't know.
If the helium balloons can't navigate through that, I don't know.
So we were talking about what you would see. Is that where we got interrupted? What you would see?
Yeah, I have some subjective experience as well. When I was doing my pilot's license, our instructor, made me cover up the instruments, so I just had to fly on horizon.
Yes,
so
sir.
I spent hours and hours up there just flying by horizon only, and we're pretty far up, and it sure all looked flat to me. But again, I can't prove that. I didn't see any arc, not by a long shot.
And you didn't have to dip your nose down or up or whatever to allow for the curve to stay level, did you? I mean, I've talked to pilots, and they go across the whole ocean. Yeah, they go across the whole ocean, and they don't tip down. And, according to NASA's numbers, you'd have to keep constantly moving down if the Earth was curved, right?
Yeah, and military artillery doesn't account for curvature.
No, does not. So I'm just going to have to learn how to be a little bit better soul traveler, and I'm going to get up to that, up to the firmament and really see what's going on up there. That's it. But it's pretty clear that whatever shape the Earth is in, and I like your idea that it really doesn't matter, but we can pretty much be assured that it's not spinning around the sun. We know that, right? I mean, it just isn't. Is it? Can't be.
I don't see it myself. And then, when you look at constellations above, certain things stay fixed the whole time.
Stars just
always
move around, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it just seems like things are moving around us. And then the other thing is when you look at so-called physical planets.
Yes, sir.
There's nothing physical about them.
I know. There's nothing physical about them.
They're plasma that are projecting rays, resonance. So then when you get into the old teachings of 7-ray astrology,
wow,
and, understand how those constellations are beaming down resonance that then inorganic elements on the ground act as capacitors, bring that resonance down to the carbon level, the ether, which is where we hang out allegedly. Then you see how the realm is interconnected, and in the context of a functional realm, it's a projector affair up there. And when you get into other teachings that have been around a real long time, those so-called plasma energies are living consciousness themselves. And if you get into, interpret the Bible as astrotheology, which is what it is, then you see the references to the 7 builders upon the throne. The 7 Elohim, who are the builders of this system of worlds, living cosmic consciousness, that then in a unified fashion project their individual attributes that then filter through the 12 constellations and then come down through the levels of ether to create physical manifestation.
And even Steiner talked about that. I mean, he knew the energetics coming from the planets and how the plants integrated with that and how we did. And many people really believe that the moon is not solid. They never walked on it. It's a plasma and an energetic, and it's a soul, just like we are, right? And it's here to help us. It's here to help us.
It's related to the water level of the ether.
The water level of the ether. Explain
which
what
is
you mean
one
by
of
that.
the 4 elements, the fire, air, water, and terra firma here. So those are the 4 elements, earth. And we were talking about water being the first fixed element. The first 2 elements, fire and air, they're volatile. That means they're not in form.
Yes,
they're
sir.
very much in motion all the time. And then those precipitate by way of nitrogen in our atmosphere interacting with oxygen and become the water vapor. And then the water vapor is what we call the first fixed element. The next fixed element is the earth. Every succeeding layer of ether plays on the one below it. And so the water ether is very important to us within this realm because it is the transmitting utility of the volatile elements, and all 4 together, as we already mentioned, combine in different ways to make the salt, the sulfur, and the mercury, soul, spirit, and body of all components of the 3 kingdoms of nature. So you go back to a functional realm, you can wrap your mind around how this technology works, and then again create some really cool stuff that
To help.
would be useful. Rather than trying to create new weapons or something.
So the kingdoms would then be plant, animal, and human?
Yes.
Are those? Okay.
No, plant, mineral, and animal, and of course, humans are loosely part of the animal kingdom because we're biological. We are like, if out of the 3, we're more mercurial, which is because we're more ambulatory. Plants can't get up and walk and fly and do all the things that members of the animal kingdom can do. The mineral realm is the most dense, but it's still the same congealed energy, only different proportions of the salt, mercury, and sulfur as compared to the animal kingdom, which is the same thing, only higher in the mercury proportion.
We're having fun talking to Bear Paul Landau. We'll let you go to work and have some breakfast, but I did the easiest question for you before we go. So what is your theory of how do we created these bodies? Where'd they come from? I mean, what do you think? Where'd they come from, and how long have they been around?
Some teachings put us, mankind on this earth at about 4 million years. Of course, I don't know. I just, regurgitate certain things that I read that also seem to be good, authentic sources for other information. And in our original state, we were perfect, no flaws, no drama or issues. And then as we, as individual creators, got a little bit caught up in our own creations, kind of lost sight of things. Even the human body at one point did not have to have internal appendages like the liver and so forth, because there's no toxicity to filter. There's no need to manufacture proteins and
that's cool.
Globulins and things.
So we created these organs because we needed them. Necessity is the mother of invention. That's interesting.
And originally, we didn't have to consume our own environment to survive either. So the liver and other organs didn't have to digest and manufacture goodies, to keep us alive. we're just more in our etheric state, and but physical nevertheless. So our present state now is actually a great place to be where we're at, because we've reached the the bottom of density, and now we're going full circle up in a very slow toroidal fashion of coming back full circle, but in a self-realized way, so that we never have to descend again and can assume our rightful position as co-creators.
I like this. So we can blow this popsicle stand after we work at it, so we don't have to come back here, right?
Yeah, no more School of Hard Knocks.
You know, I had a soul travel experience years ago where I saw something like, this is crazy. It's almost like as the energetics of anger or something, where souls were coming in and doing this, at the same level there was plants being created at the same time on Earth that would help the liver to detox what soul was doing. Does that make sense? I saw that one time. It was like, whoa, does that make sense to you?
That's great. That's great. Also,
and I wasn't even on drugs, and I didn't take any drugs.
Sometimes those are the best out-of-body experiences.
Yeah, they're great.
A little less distortion. You look at the animal kingdom, for instance, we go back to that original time, and we're told there's no animals. And animals came about as the embodiment of our lower emotions. Now, we all love animals.
Whoa.
On the other hand, they weren't part of the original design. But when we were still in that powerful creative state, but started entertaining more of what we consider more the lower emotions, but still more in that ability to instantly manifest our thoughts and feelings, that gave birth to the animal kingdom. So animals are embodied emotions. Now, they don't have the ability to be malicious and just screw with people for the heck of it, people do. But they still, embody those kind of lower states of emotions. And because of that, Native Americans and other indigenous folks understood the different archetypes within animal medicine really represented aspects of ourselves, and that knowledge can be used. And then people that love animals, especially when you domesticate animals, it's a way of freeing those animals from that form that is an embodiment of a lower emotion, so that they can return to universal and not have to keep repeating cycles, where they're really abused in this realm in the first place.
Interesting. So just because we were learning our way when we were first here, you're saying that then because as we were dealing with these lower emotions that were new to us and we got confused and whatever, that we created these animals, or these animals were manifested to help us to learn from, I guess?
No, not necessarily. They were just created by us when we were more in that empowered state of instant manifestation.
Oh, that's
Things are moving a little bit slower now, but in that state of manifestation, we were entertaining for the first time, emotions more attributed to the lower chakras, and then solar plexus down, and then those became real form. And then our human form is a matter of geometry that is accord with all the things we've been talking about. And then that geometry creates a resonance, which we can even figure out mathematically as far as why we have 5 fingers and toes and in the form that we have. And it gets into all the Steiner stuff as far as the metabolic and neurological pull and all the alchemy. And it all starts to make sense, actually.
Yeah. Steiner was probably a semi-flat earther in one sense, if he knew that the planets weren't solid.
No, not necessarily so. And there's a lot of debate about that. Some Steiner people are staunch globe heads. I interpret Steiner a little bit more between the lines. Okay. But,
Okay. So I can't let you go yet, because we can't have these little bodies how we kind of got here, maybe sort of, with your theories, and it sounds right to me. But then what about the good stuff, male and female? Okay, so more to the male and female, just other than creating the species, right? I mean, there's some really magical things going on here with boy and girl.
like everything else in existence, how can you not have a polarization if we are in fact a product of those same electrical polarized forces? And if you understand the nature of positive versus negative on the electrical level, it would explain why girl forms are different than boy forms and why they have the different anatomical structures that they do.
Mm-hmm. So it's can it be argued then that this whole thing that started 50, 60, 70 years ago, trying to encourage women that what they were, they needed to be stronger and women's lib and all that stuff, was a kind of a more of a darker force trying to cause trouble because that's what they do for a living?
Yeah, exactly. And a good part of that was to create a larger, pure and simple.
A larger what? You cut out there a second. To create a larger what, sir?
Tax base.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Get the women out in the workforce.
Oh, I never thought
of course,
of that.
Ignoring the fact that, that internal yin principle is stronger than hell. It just manifests itself different than, more the hardness of the outer shell that we attribute to yang, but they both have a job. They both work in unison. But now you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater and one become the other. And then we've got 37 genders now and everything else. But,
I thought it was only 34. I think it was only 34. Huh. There appears, though, there's just some real potential with the male-female on all different levels that could be pretty magical when we can really work with that, right? Am I just a hopeless romantic?
No, not at all. And in fact, if you go back, into different cultures that understood, like just during sexual relationships, if a man and a woman were really aware, now you can take on that energy through that act and exchange it between each other and then cycle it consciously through energy pathways in the body. Rather than the guy just squirting and then lighting up a cigarette and having a roast beef sandwich, which is the thing that, which is the thing that ages males more than any other thing. It's losing bodily fluids, and so we should be taught that you don't have to refrain from anything, but you just use it consciously, and then you don't waste. And you recycle, and then when you can recycle with the opposite polarity, that brings balance.
And also, the Taoists talk about the healing aspects of that.
Amazing.
Amazing, especially for the woman, and then you can have more fun because if you're not squirting, as you said, you can just do it all the time if you want. I mean, who knows? What does it matter?
And that's why you and I still look so good while we're in our hundreds here.
Is that right? Yeah, we're working on the hundreds. Yeah, it's pretty fun. Well, it's a shame we didn't really talk about anything interesting this morning. I mean, come on. I mean, man, you're really fun to talk to. Thanks so much. We're gonna come visit sometime. I look at that and I want to just jump in that. And that river is cold, right? That river's cold.
It's cold, but this time of year it's pretty hot, so it feels real good when you jump in. By the way, we're having a law seminar here in the end of August. Of course, you'd be invited to it.
What's that?
I know it's a long ways from Texas.
That's
right. The name of the workshop is I Am the Living Law. It's pretty exclusive. It's for people that have been around the block a little bit more, not for newbies.
Right.
And not trying to be exclusive or anything, but we have some very special people that are going to be here, and we start from law on a spiritual basis and take you A to Z from, being a change of status, not so much in politics, but who you are at a deeper level.
Yes,
and then moving all the way through on how to conduct your affairs to protect your business, your property.
Excellent.
And be in honor with the beast, not be at odds with them. But keep yourself in the private.
I like that. Honor with the beast. That's a beautiful way to say it. And that's going to be the end of August in your place?
19, 20, 21 of August. And so every day we'll have a midday swim break and good food and we're going to limit it to about 21 people. I think it might already be filled up. But if you ever have a hankering to get in the car,
you'd let me in if I want to come up,
west,
right? Okay.
We'd always make a spot for you.
I'd love to do that because I studied the Constitution 20 years ago and all about this stuff and taxes and, the straw man and all that stuff. And, so I'm really kind of interested in it. And I think we're going to need to get a little creative as long as we're in a physical body of how to deal with, how to have a relationship with the beast without fighting them,
Yeah. And just like chemistry in my lab, it's about transmutation from one element to a higher state. So the whole concept is the law, as we've been just in the corporeal body, the salt with no mana, by way of the straw man and all that business. What we are doing through our processes is understanding how to transmute that energy into living law.
How to transmute that energy. And it is a spiritual law that I've learned with my path, that we are a law unto ourselves, right? We are as spiritual beings, and then we get to do whatever we want, as long as I can borrow from Richard Maybury. Do all you have agreed to do, his 2 laws, right? Do all you have agreed to do, and do not encroach on other persons or their property, right? Other than that, we get to do what we want to do, don't we? We just do.
That's why we're calling the workshop I Am the Living Law.
I am the living law. I am the living law. Cool, baby. Well, it's such an honor to talk to you. Thanks for so much time. Gosh, we've gone a couple of hours. Can you hold on a second? I want to just check in before we go. You stay right there. Thank you. I love you. Thanks, and to you. I've not met your wife, but tell her I love her too, and your dog. And you're going to get a golden retriever, are you? You thinking?
Well, we just lost one dog we had for a long time. It's kind of a heartbreaker. So, we don't want to jump into something else. We're exploring.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Love you. Take care of yourself. You stay right there.
Love you a lot.
Patrick Timpone, OneRadioNetwork.com. Is he something else or what? Yeah, baby. Bear Paul Lando, Alphavetic.com. Alphavetic.com. So we will see you tomorrow. We're going to talk about money, oil, gold, politics, Russia, China, with 2 really, really exceptional people. Jim Rogers, he's in Singapore at 9 o'clock Central Time, and then Matthew Arrett, I believe he's at noon Central Time, and we'll shake it up a little bit. There's some fun things going on with China and Russia, and they're just not putting up with a lot of the West anymore. I don't know what. We may need to learn Mandarin or Russian or something. Oh, well, we'll see you tomorrow. We'll have a good time. I love you all very much. Thank you for your support. Appreciate it. May the blessings be. Take care.
Broadcasting from the beautiful Hill Country in Texas, this is OneRadioNetwork.com.